This is my smaller, I think it's an A tone, but a much higher frequency Tibetan singing bowl. I believe this one's handmade. It has an Om symbol in it. Beautiful. I've had this one for many years. So, yeah, welcome to the New Being Hypnosis channel. My name is Troy J. Bacon. I am a hypnotherapist in Seattle, Washington, and you can find me at newbeinghypnosis.com. So, welcome to episode 3 of the Web of Life series. And I have some very interesting topics to talk about. A lot kind of prompted by things that happened over the recent weekend from November 11th to November 13th, 2022. And those dates were the dates of the Ghost Conference in Port Gamble, Washington. And so I attended the Ghost Conference with my wife. And at first, I didn't know exactly what to expect. We'd been to Port Gamble, but this was quite a different experience. It was 3 days, of course, very mystical in a lot of it. A lot of mediums there, and of course, it's a very old port town that has had a lot of history, and a lot of people died there too. Um, and so there are a lot of ghosts that people see, hear, and experience there. And the experience, I mean, is mostly from them moving things and making noises and interacting too. So having these close-up encounters with ghosts, really a lot of them throughout the weekend, almost every single day, there was some activity that I witnessed, that other people witnessed, and that were taken on tours of. And so one of the most noteworthy things was in the Walker Ames house, um, a historic, very old mansion in Port Gamble that has a lot of activity, especially different things on each floor. And so that was just one of the things, one of the places we went, where some of the deceased people, who are still people, were interacting with us on a level that I hadn't experienced before. They were answering our questions interactively with um, objects they can interact with, toys and electronics especially, and some other objects such as dowsing rods. They were fairly on point too. And so that wasn't recorded. They don't seem to do well with recordings, at least to my knowledge. And so it was best that it was just left as a private event in our memories. But so having these experiences with so many ghosts and spirits around all weekend really made me think about what it means to be alive. I've been thinking about that more, what it means to be alive in a body, the differences between being still present and alive in a space you're connected to or died in versus actually living in a body, and the gifts of being in a body, the properties that we can employ, and the things we can do in a body. And so I'll be talking about that, as well as this might be a long video if I talk about everything I want to. So I also want to talk about what it means to be in a body. I'll just get into that for a bit. The differences that I figured out between being deceased and present in a body and being alive in a body. And so many of this isn't just a local phenomena, by the way. There are many spirits in Port Gamble that people experience consistently and repeatedly. Many of them are known and we get to know them. But this is something that happens everywhere, I think. People die in places, and often when people die and aren't ready to die or die suddenly and traumatically, then they're still in shock. Their spirit is still in shock. And so then they get stuck in one place. Some places definitely are what I would call a positive energy zone. And that is a geographical thing. And it's, I think, just the energies of the earth and ley lines and minerals in the ground and water running through the ground too, that creates a higher energy around that spirits are attracted to and that they just want to live in. They don't necessarily want to leave. And in a little bit, I'll also be talking about things I learned at the Ghost Conference and things that happened, and especially lessons I learned, especially the ethics of mediumship and etiquette of mediumship when you're entering a space that has resident spirits in it. Anyway, about the body issue, body topic. Um, of course, we all have these human bodies. Anybody who's watching this is a human body, I would assume. And so we all work pretty similarly in our body. We can eat foods, digest foods, we can be poisoned, we can be injured, we can be murdered. Our bodies are also very capable and designed perfectly to process emotions. Our brain, the brain in particular, is quite an interesting phenomenal organ by itself, with the pineal gland in the center that allows us to develop it, to refine it, and get in touch with it. And it is what really allows us while we're in our body to see energies, see auras, see spirits, even feel and sense energies and spirits, and hear them too, and also see into other worlds. And yeah, the pineal gland is quite a topic to get into. I could talk about that in another video. So anyway, the brain, the way I think of it, is that it's a conduit. I've believed this and thought of it like this for a long time, many years. It's like a conduit between our soul, our energy, the senses, the physical senses of our body, such as sight, sound, touch, smell, and feeling, and other things. But it also allows us, along with the other faculties of our body, to develop these sixth, seventh, probably eighth, ninth, and tenth, and other senses that people call extrasensory perception, such as seeing auras energy, seeing spirits, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, which is just sensing other energies and beings around, knowing that they're there, but not necessarily seeing them. And then there's claircognizance, which is one of my strongest ones, along with clairaudience, which is just knowing what is and just knowingness of yourself, of what you perceive in the spirit world, of just knowingness of just knowingness. It's not necessarily sight and sound, but you just feel and know. And that's a whole sense by itself that may be more unusual, but everyone can develop, I believe. And so these bodies are quite phenomenal. Not only do we have all these senses, but we have the ability to develop our energy bodies within our physical bodies. And our energy bodies are like a what is it? Kind of like a hologram or a double of the physical body. And that's especially the closest energy body to us. It's most dense, that we can feel and sense most easily. And that is the energy body too that projects astrally, sometimes in dreams. People can also learn to do that and do it. Some people do it naturally, just astral projection out of their body. And I know some people are quite gifted at that and can do combat and other amazing things with that. So we have this energy body that has all these energy centers, especially the seven main chakras in the central column. I think of as a trunk along our spine, especially. Um, I've learned that they're like spheres of vibrational, colorful energy that each, especially along the central column, um, are like on the inner side of our spine and our body. And so we can access it through spinal work, through Kundalini work, through Qigong, through visualization and meditation on chakras. And there are many out there to learn and many know. I could go into other energy work, um, meditations and techniques in another video. So anyway, we have these seven, I think of actually as nine or probably 10 or 11 total within the central column, such as the nose and mouth chakra, the soul gate chakra at the back of the head, and then there's the higher heart, as well as the lower heart that I've learned of as like the goddess chakra that everyone has, and that's the more feminine goddess energy that everyone can access, along with the central heart. And so there are many such as that. And then in the Kabbalistic system, there are 12 chakras or energy centers in the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life. And so we have these Kabbalah is there's like two different old and new versions of Kabbalah I've heard about. One that recognizes the Christed heart center and one that doesn't. That's, I think, the older one. And so there's like the central column of the energy centers in Kabbalah, and then there's at least three on the left and right columns that each correspond to something different. And so that's part of what it's like being a body. Um, we have these senses, these perceptions, these energy centers, this energy body. One hypothesis I've come to is that I haven't actually proven this. I should probably try to prove this or verify it with a medium and spirits who can communicate with, and try to prove it some other way too, through experience maybe. But one hypothesis I've come to is that the difference between being in a body, especially as a living person, it so we have this energy body, but we also have this Merkaba, and that, to my sense, is not something that ghosts and deceased spirits have, at least not that I've ever heard of people talk about. And so the Merkaba that's I believe also Jewish or Hebrew actually, word that comes from the Kabbalah and that system of ancient Judeo mysticism and knowledge. And so the the Merkaba is something that is like a toroidal energy field. That a toroid is like a donut shape almost. It has like this inner column almost, and then at the top it um, branches out like kind of like a donut shape, but much more broad and wide for the Merkaba, and then expands around us, curves around us, and then comes back, and also like a donut, it comes up and curves back up into the lower energy body where I believe it also connects to the root chakra, and it's just this constantly recycling field around us. But not only that, it's just this big energy field that I've heard can be up to 36 feet wide around us. And it's, of course, multidimensional, mostly fifth and sixth dimensional in its density and nature. And so that Merkaba is something that humans have, is, to the best of my knowledge, and not deceased spirits. And so that Merkaba, I believe, goes with us when the true soul, heavenly soul or divine soul aspect leaves the body and goes back into the spirit world, which is another topic I can talk much more about in another video. Quite complicated. I can say a lot about the soul and what I believe it is and how it works. And so, yeah, the Merkaba is like the energy body of the soul, I guess you could put it that way. And so I just don't sense that ghosts, at least the ones I've known and been around, have this Merkaba and this bigger, wider energy field that I also sense around living humans. So that's my hypothesis. I'll save more of that topic for another video, but I want to get back into some of the, let's go into the lessons I learned at the Ghost Conference, especially around mediumship. I'll start with that. So one thing I enjoyed is that many of the mediums and people at the Ghost Conference, especially the mediums who are clairvoyant and see spirits and have other abilities too, many of them, um, especially the ones who go to like old houses and old buildings that people call in, like they get hired and call them in to um, do a space clearing or something of that nature, where perhaps a family that moved into a house or that lives there, or somebody knows and is very aware that there seems to be this haunting. Actually, I don't like the word haunting. It seems to have a very negative implication among much of modern society. So I just prefer to use the word activity. And so there's this obvious activity that people know about inside of a building. People are maybe hearing noises. Perhaps some people see a certain figure or spirits around. Sometimes there might be shadow figures, which, by the way, are not all bad. Um, the shadow, I've learned, is just the easiest way that a spirit can appear and just be. It's the easiest color anyway they can appear as, um, unless they appear as the human body they used to be. But in the spirit world and from the spirit world, it's the shadow is like the easiest figure color they can appear as in our world. Some spirits of like higher densities and higher energy can of course appear as other colors. But yeah, the shadow people are not all bad. So sometimes people may see shadow people. Sometimes people may just see actual people they know have lived there, maybe that have been recorded as a caretaker of a building or a resident of a place. And so there's this kind of common mentality that I've witnessed and also been a part of in the past among many light workers, especially. lightworker mediums who have learned how to direct energy in the spirit world and how to bless spaces and how to call in spirits and other things. And so there's this practice of crossing over that a lot of light workers seem to do. They just show up in a place and cross over spirits. Sometimes this is absolutely necessary, and sometimes it's absolutely essential. However, what I learned at the Ghost Conference is that it's usually best to not just go into a space and assume that the spirits there causing activity are just negative or evil. They're not all that. And so the mentality that is shared among many of the mediums at the Ghost Conference that I appreciate is one of respect of the people, the deceased people and the spirits who live in a certain place, who may have died there, who may have just lived there in their life and want to live there for any reason, maybe from the positive energy from the land or just because they want to be there. But just because they've caused a bit of activity to a living resident doesn't mean that they're necessarily hostile, doesn't mean that they need to be banished. They can just be gotten to know in a way, I guess is a good term. Um, Mediums especially can get to know spirits. And for example, one of the good things that Sarah Lemos at the Ghost Conference had brought up is there are like only a few questions that many people ask about spirits or ask for them or to them, and like who they are, what their name is, what they want, why they're here, how they died, maybe a few other common questions. But she likes to ask questions out of the ordinary, such as what foods they like to eat, how they tended to dress, the hobbies they may have had, um, what they like to do for a hobby or just to pass time or even a living. But one of the fun things that I appreciated from Sarah Lemos is especially that she asks what a spirit's favorite song was or is, and what type of music they like to listen to or their favorite artist, and then she can look that up like on her phone, for instance, and just play that song. And so that's a really great way to just play some music to a spirit and see, especially if you can see them, get their reaction and um, lighten the mood, just get to know them a little bit. And maybe they want to live in a place and just be there. They don't care to cross on to the light that they don't know about. Maybe they just want to, yeah, just be there and they just want to be friends. And so when someone moves into an old house and there's this activity happening, paranormal activity or phenomenal activity, then many humans get freaked out, but maybe it's just a spirit expressing their boundaries and expressing or making themselves known. Or sometimes what I've learned from recent experiences in my life is that it could even be a spirit trying to get your attention for a particular issue. Maybe you're drinking at home too much, maybe you're smoking too much, or maybe you're having bad company over that they're trying to alert you of, or something of that nature. It could be anything. Everyone has a different life. Um, Maybe you have a health issue looming. Maybe you haven't been eating the greatest, and so maybe the resident spirit or even an ancestor spirit around you, or who knows what, who they could be, is actually trying to get your attention because they care about you and just want to let you know that maybe you are having heart trouble or that your lungs aren't the healthiest or that it'd be better if you exercise a little bit more or even talk a little bit nicer to yourself and others. So yeah, there's that. Um, that's a way I think of healing spirits who have died and deceased, who used to live in a place, is getting to know them, getting to know why they may have overdosed or killed themselves, or maybe they didn't make, maybe they couldn't have done anything about it if they were murdered, but yeah, getting to know why they died and the circumstances, and also what they like to do, some of the mistakes they made in life. So that's valuable. That's very valuable, especially from a healing perspective. Um, if you're a light worker, if you are a healer yourself, if you're a bit psychic or a medium, then I think these are essential ways that we will all need to be employing and learning as we evolve as humans on this planet, because for probably centuries, even maybe thousands of years, many people have had a very negative perspective on spirits and ghosts. Not everywhere, but everyone's different. Anyway, one of the questions I'm glad I asked that I got answered is that, yes, indeed, when you work with a family, such as, let's say there's maybe even a family of people who died in a house, like an intergenerational house, and then somebody else buys up the house and moves in, and then they're asking for a medium to help out, or even the descendants of those people still live in that house, and their ancestors in that case would be making themselves known and causing activity. And so, if a gifted medium knows this concept and is wise enough, then perhaps they can even do ancestral healing with the deceased ancestors and learn what types of um, maybe a curse they may have had, or a behavioral trait that was passed down through a family, or even a genetic trait, or something else that may have been an ancestral issue, even an injury that was passed down through generations, repeated through genetics. Definitely working with deceased spirits, especially ancestors, and learning what they had and what they need to work on, um, the afflictions they had, healing those will then have an energetic effect on the ethereal bloodline, which I'll be talking about more in the future. I'm learning a lot more about bloodlines, and especially the ethereal bloodlines and how to activate them. And so that has an effect on the ethereal bloodline of a family, and that can have just an indirect healing effect on whoever else is still living from that bloodline and that genealogy. So one of the things that I have observed from ghosts and spirits, not just at the ghost conference, but throughout my life, is many of them get stuck in the ways they were when they were in their body, and that includes the trauma they suffered, the beliefs, their religion, or any other beliefs they had, even about maybe the limited ways that things work when they were alive, or the things that were understood about how things work when they were alive. Yeah, trauma gets stuck in the body. And this is one thing I want to touch on in this video that I'll probably go into much greater depth in another video, but there's this dichotomy of the body and our soul, energy body, and spirit, especially just the soul, energy body, and spirit. And so the things that happen to our body and energy body then get felt and recorded within our soul, which connects to our Akashic record or is a part of it, or it becomes quantum when you talk about all of that. But anyway, things that happen to us get recorded in our soul and our soul's memory. And so the things that happen to us also get recorded in our body's memory. in each individual cell, in each DNA strand, um, in each organ, and each part of the body has its own memory of what happens to it. Um, yeah, our bodies are very quantum and amazing mechanisms. That's why trauma healing, hypnotherapy for trauma and other conditions is so important, is to help get things cleared out of the body, out of the subconscious, get things healed, reprogrammed, clean up the programs, clean up the negativity. And so, yeah, then there's this also dynamic of how the soul, part of which I believe lives in the heart, the more loving feeling part, and then the conscious awareness and perception lives in is seated in the pineal gland, at least anchored into it. The properties of our soul, our true essence especially, cannot be dampened. Well, they can be dampened through trauma and other experiences, but the true essence of the soul cannot be stopped from being a part of our body and interacting with it and breathing with it. And when our soul has a particular nature, such as peace, such as liveliness, such as masculinity, maybe femininity, such as creativity, exploration, healing. There's so many ways so many specialties that a soul can major in throughout lifetimes. I'll talk about that too in another video. Yeah, there's just so much that can go on with a soul. And so, what is most prominent in our soul, each of our souls definitely shapes our body and our personality, especially as we grow and we behave in this life. And so the personality that anybody is partly connected to the nature of their soul that cannot be ignored ever, or cannot be stopped ever until mortal death anyway. And so what seems to happen when a person's mortal body dies and is no longer able to function for whatever reason, then there is this thing that I don't have time to get into all of it right now, but this um, automatic reaction from the spirit called paratactic dissociation. And this happens, you see, with animals in nature when a predator has its talons or jaws clamped into them or around them, and they know that they can't get free. At that moment, the animal's body goes limp completely, and it's like they're not even alive anymore, hardly. At least some of them, a lot of the time, that's the case. And that's a reaction called paratactic dissociation. It happens with humans too. When we experience trauma, especially physical trauma, it's very common for our spirit, especially the energy body and soul, to leave the body. Some people experience astral projection, some people experience near-death experiences in extreme cases. Some people just dissociate from the pain and can't even pay attention to it. And so there's different levels of that, but that's something that happens. And so when a person's body dies, stops functioning, then our energy body does not die. And so it seems that, at least from my feeling and experience, when a body dies, then the soul, which you can think of as a type of light, or there's many ways to describe it, possibly. It's not really just one thing, I think. But the soul goes back to the spirit world, wherever its native innate home is, its native vibration, and where it best belongs. And I think that, just as I was saying, the Merkaba around us is like this big quantum aura around us, even larger than the normal human aura. That's like the energy body of the soul that probably just goes back to the Akashic record or somewhere to get maybe recycled or recorded, at least with the information in it. And so what seems to happen when people die is if they're not ready to die and move on to higher spiritual worlds, then their spirit gets stuck in this world, quite often in a particular spot, like a particular room or a building or wherever they died, sometimes to a particular object, maybe that was sentimental to them in life. And so, anyway, what I've observed happening then is the energy body and sometimes maybe the mind, the mental qualities that we're imprinted with. This is something we're going to probably in the next video or another video is the filters around and within our human body that we're born with and develop throughout life. Anyway, the mind and the way it's imprinted from, especially astrologically from birth, then I believe can stay here. And that's what some ghosts are, is mind and mental awareness of the person they used to be. But the very higher, like around the crown or the higher parts of the soul, leave and go back to the spirit world. But a part of them can stay here sometimes as real mental awareness of who they are and where they are and what's happening. Some ghosts are definitely an imprint or program imprinted onto the land or a building or a space. That this is why emotions are so powerful and such a powerful way for us to master and become masterful within our reality. Emotions, especially when people do something repeatedly, like let's say walk up and down stairs. I've heard many stories of ghosts being sighted just walking up and down stairs or walking down a hallway, or let's say looking out a window. People might see them that way, or like doing something, maybe even carrying something, just going up and down stairs or hallway or something, or maybe even knitting or doing something they used to do in life. I believe that when someone does something like that enough and repeatedly and with enough emotional intensity, then that can just leave an imprint from their behavior and from who they are on the land. But that doesn't mean that that ghost that's seen has any mental awareness or any way of responding to a ghost hunter or a paranormal investigator. I don't like to use the word ghost hunting either. That's quite negative, I believe. And so, anyway, all of this is why it is so important to, through whatever system, through especially through your ancestral bloodline, spiritualities, and culture, which is, I'll talk about why that's so powerful and important in another video. But to develop some sort of a belief in a higher power, to develop our relationship with our subconscious minds and or mind and inner landscape, and then watch that flourish and interact with that and see how interacting with that changes our outward reality. And so that's why it's so important while we're alive in these bodies to be carrying or to be working on actively healing ourselves, not holding on to programs, especially negative programs and trauma and conditioned thoughts and beliefs, and to work on truly healing ourselves, liberating ourselves, and freeing our spirits from ties to this world, especially the need to be tied to a part of this world or the need to be attached to something. And many of us live very long lives. We certainly can. Yeah. Unfortunately, some of us die early or are killed early. But theoretically, for those who, or hypothetically, for those who live a long life, it's especially important to not live live with regrets and live with attachments and live with what you could call chains or things that weigh you down like baggage. That's why in the Egyptian cosmology, which I do believe is partly influenced by Syrian visitations, and I'll talk about that in another video and why that is, and more about Syrian cosmology and beliefs. That's why in Egyptian cosmology, especially, probably some other systems around the world, it's said that like there's the character of the ferryman, the Anubis, who takes you to the underworld, takes you across the river of, I think some people call it the Styx, or the river of souls, to go to the underworld or the other side. And then you meet with Osiris, and he needs to judge you by weighing your heart against a feather on a scale. And if your heart is heavier than the feather, then you don't get to move on into that spirit world. Honestly, I do believe that we all get to return to the spirit world, and depending on our development in this lifetime, we can even access higher worlds, depending on our initiations and graduations and healing. So that's why it's so important to learn to live with a heart that is at least, or no heavier than a feather. The heart is like a multidimensional portal. Anyways, that's about an hour now, kind of a long video. That's a lot about what I've learned from recent interactions and throughout my life too, but recent interactions that really made me think more deeply about what it means to be alive in a human body. And I'll be talking especially more about what we can do in these bodies with our energy bodies and more in other videos. So stay tuned for that. From the light of Sirius, I wish you unconditional blessings, as we are all sacred beings. Just a reminder, I do have my Patreon channel out, Troy J. Bacon, and I would encourage any of you who wish to take part in my services and become more deeply free and healed, and learn to really refine yourselves through hypnotherapy, heal trauma, tinnitus, and fears, phobias, reprogram stuff within you, habits and behaviors. Reach out to me at newbeinghypnosis.com and become a member of my Patreon channel, because that's how you get great discounts on my sessions. And there are 3 different tiers that are explained on that channel. Not only does your membership from that channel get you great discounts for what you give and pay, that gives you access to my services as well as supporting this channel. And always a portion of your membership and donations and support for New Being Hypnosis does go to the Reality Orphanage, which I'm supporting in Mayuge, Uganda, for one of my soul brothers who started that orphanage. At least 1% of my monthly earnings will be going to supporting that as a donation and charity effort. They don't have access to clean water still. They're mostly drinking dirty, non-sanitary water, and often go without food too. They're very low on funds. They kind of live in a remote town of Uganda that doesn't have a lot of support from the big cities or government either. So your participation in New Being Hypnosis sessions will not only help you become clearer, brighter, and more healthy energetically, and more of what you want to be, but it will be helping to fund the essentials of life for those, I think they have 40 or 50 children there, dozens of children at that orphanage in Uganda. If you wish to donate directly to the Reality Orphanage, you can also go to newbeinghypnosis.com, and that is linked up on the homepage, where you can just click on the photo of the kids at the Reality Orphanage, and it'll take you to their website where you can make a secure donation. So quite inspiring work. Oh, and on Facebook, there's also the public group now called Saving the Reality Orphanage. So please feel free to join that, where you can keep up with fundraisers and donation efforts, or you can just donate directly to the Reality Orphanage too, and also see the good that is coming out of your donations and my donations to them too. I hope that you are benefiting from listening to your guidance and your guides and angels and ancestors and whatever other spirits are around you and you believe in. And yeah, experiencing miracles and blessings in your life. So if you're enjoying the New Being Hypnosis channel, please do like this video, share it on social media and wherever else you can. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I wish to see you in the next episode. So to close, I will do another tone with this. I believe it's an A tone, this handmade Tibetan singing bowl. Anyway, this singing bowl. So take a deep breath in. It has been an honor to be sharing more of my peace with you. Thank you. Much love your way.